So is the Tusk of the Boar boring or exciting? Well, in this video, we're going to cover that and much more. All that being said, if you want to see more educational content for Destiny 2, sci-fi content, and plenty more down the road, then be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get straight into the video. So one of the biggest selling points when it comes to choosing a weapon, everything really comes down to its design. And one thing is for certain, the Tusk of the Boar does not disappoint in this area. I'm a really big fan of the Iron Banner finish, that is the gold, brown, green type of earthy appeal, and it's very fitting of the name Tusk of the Boar. And this being a Strand as well as Strand grenade launcher, a Strand wave frame to be precise, I do feel like everything just comes together in a really, really great way. And I just love the detailing on this. Just everything kind of fits together and aligns with not just the name, but the Strand subclass. And I love the silver finish on the barrel, the woody, earthy feel. Again, going back to the name of the boar, very earthy, animal feel. Overall, I just really, really love the design. So big shout outs to the design team at Bungie for this. And so my honest take on this out of 5, I would honestly give it a 4.5 out of 5. I love the design of it. Just again, the small attention to detail on these weapons really, really make them stand out. And you can see, for example, just the little design here with the screws and just going to the back of the weapon with the little hooks on the back, like the 2 little X's on the side. Just all of these little small tiny bits of detail are what really make it stand out. So that's my take. That being said, let's move on to the perks and performance. Now, to get a better idea of the performance of the Tusk of the Boar, it's important for us to look at other more notable wave frame grenade launchers that are currently in the game. So right now, we're taking a look at Undercurrent, New Pacific Epitaph, Harsh Language, and Forbearance as the competitors to Tusk of the Boar. Now at base, blast radius is 100, velocity is 69, stability is 23, handling is 69, reload speed is 68, aim assist 66, zoom is 13, airborne effectiveness is at 2, RPM 72, magazines at 1, reserves 22, and lastly, the recoil direction sits at 66. So how does that stack up against the other 4 competitors? Well, currently, Tusk of the Boar, unfortunately, sits just under the 70 mark when it comes to stability, while everything else sits above 70. Stability, Undercurrent, and Harsh Language are the only 2 that are slightly below Tusk of the Boar, with 22 and 20 being the respective numbers for Undercurrent and Harsh Language. Epitaph and Forbearance sit at 26 and 27. And moving on to handling, the only one that loses out here is Harsh Language at 66. And so we can safely say that Tusk of the Boar does beat out Harsh Language in this area. However, Epitaph and Forbearance, again, their numbers are slightly higher, but Undercurrent does sit at a tie in terms of that respective area. Next, we have reload speed. Reload speed's at 68 for Tusk of the Boar, while Undercurrent is at 69, Epitaph 71, Harsh Language again loses out at 65, and Forbearance at 71. Aim assist, everything else beats it out the water with relatively high numbers in the high 70s. Zoom, everything remains the same at 13. Airborne effectiveness, however, is really where the Tusk kind of falls behind, where it sits at a measly 2, while everything else sits at either 3 or 4. RPM is all the same across the board, same with the magazine size, but the only thing that loses out for the reserves is the Harsh Language, which sits at 21, with everything else sitting at the bare minimum of 22. And lastly, the recoil direction, we can see that the Undercurrent sits at 73, while 63, I should say, and everything else is at 70 or higher. So Tusk of the Boar only beats out Undercurrent in this particular area. So what does that mean for Tusk of the Boar in terms of its performance? Well, I took a lot of different roles, I took a lot of different variants of the Tusk of the Boar into PvE and PvP. And so we're going to move on to what we now want to talk about, which are the perks. So what are the perks for the Tusk of the Boar? Well, Tusk of the Boar, honestly speaking, I feel has a lot of potential in this area. And because it is a wave frame, and because it's a Strand wave frame, there are a lot of great ways for you to utilize it. And most notably, if you are having a Strand build, this is where things pop off. So you have Envious Assassin in the third column, you have Enlightened Action, Grave Robber, Slice, Slideways, and Pulse. With the fourth, you have Chain Reaction, Hatchling, Bait and Switch, Swashbuckler, Vorpal Weapon, and lastly Deconstruct. Then of course, with the Iron of the Banner, you have your Skulking Wolf, and you also have your Field Tested. Now, Field Tested of course is the more PvE perk here, with PvP being more aligned with Skulking Wolf. So when it comes to overall combinations, let's dive into that next. Before we dive in, I wanted to talk about the first and second columns as well, since that's something I kind of missed out on, but I want to go into more detail with regards to the perk combinations now. So in the first and second column, we have Volatile Launch, we have Confined Launch, Countermass, Hard Launch, Linear Compensator, Quick Launch, and Smart Drift Control, with the second column giving us High Velocity rounds and Implosion rounds. Now if this thing had Disorienting Grenades, that would be disgusting, but that's for another time. In my case, what I loved to pick on Tusk most notably was the Smart Drift Control. And the only reason why is because I like a more consistent playstyle, and Smart Drift Control allows for stability, velocity, recoil direction, and handling to get a significant increase in the numbers at +10, +5, +15, and +10 respectively. And then on the second column, I opted for High Velocity rounds, which again gave me an additional 10 velocity and reload speed. So what were the combinations I tested in both PvE and PvP? Well, for starters, we have the likes of Chain Reaction, Enlightened Action, High Velocity rounds, and Smart Drift Control. That was one of my first rolls I ever got with Tusk of the Boar, and I honestly gotta say, this one was one of my favorites. Second, we have Hatchling, Enlightened Action, High Velocity rounds, and Confined Launch. Next, we have Swashbuckler, Enlightened Action, High Velocity rounds, Confined Launch. Then we have Deconstruct, Enlightened Action, High Velocity, Volatile Launch. Then we have Bait and Switch, Envious Assassin, High Velocity rounds, Linear Compensator. Vorpal Weapon, Grave Robber, High Velocity rounds, Confined Launch. And lastly, we have one of my favorites too, Vorpal Weapon and Slideways, High Velocity rounds, and of course Smart Drift Control. Now, why do I like the Slideways Vorpal Weapon? Well, for one, for some reason, I don't know why, but because I play a lot of PvP, Slideaway seems to fit more of my playstyle than anything else. And I felt like that was a really good combination, just being able to slide and refresh my weapon for the ammunition, and then Vorpal just give me that increased damage against bosses, mini bosses, and that for me just felt more in line with how I like to play. Does that mean it's the best loadout or the best perk combination? Of course not. I would personally go for something like, Hatchling, if you're looking for something that's in alignment with your Strand loadout, or even of course, as I mentioned earlier, Chain Reaction, Enlightened Action. Really both combinations are great. You could even go Envious Assassin and Chain Reaction too if you wanted. Grave Robber is also a great one if you're going for a melee build. Slice, of course, is fantastic. Slice is honestly, in my opinion too, one of the better. If you are going for a Strand build, you can even go Slice Hatchling. And even if you're not Strand, Slice is still fantastic because of that Sever debuff, which is really good. It just completely nullifies the damage output of your enemies, making it easier when it comes to doing runs, such as dungeons, or just PvE in general. So those are my roles, and what do I feel for PvP? Now, PvP, personally, I don't feel like Tusk of the Boar really shines in this area, just based off my experience alone. The wave frame archetype is okay in PvP, but I really do feel like Tusk of the Boar shines more predominantly in PvE, where there's a lot to take advantage of, which again goes right back to what I was talking about with Slice and Hatchling, Chain Reaction. These are perks that typically tend to shine more where there is a lot of hordes, you know, enemies are going to be attacking you from left and right. So Tusk of the Boar will shine in that area. And of course, with Onslaught coming up very soon, as of this video recording, it's going to be a really, really great asset to have in your weapon inventory. So that being said, let's move on to my closing statements and what I really think of Tusk of the Boar overall. My final thoughts on Tusk of the Boar. Is it worth the farm in Iron Banner? I'll be honest, I'll say yes. Yes, because you have access to a lot of great cool perk combinations. Most notably, you have Slice and Hatchling, and those being two of the more impactful when it comes to building a Strand loadout. So if you are a Strand main out there, Slice, Hatchling is definitely the two most quintessential perk combinations you'd want to have. Now, even if you aren't running Strand, as I mentioned earlier, having Slice is really impactful to get that nice Sever debuff, but Hatchling is just as impactful too, because those Threadlings, they do the work for you, and you don't have to really think too much in that regard. And of course, you have other really good perk combinations. You have Enlightened Action and Chain Reaction, and you can do Enlightened Action, Hatchling, Slice Swashbuckler, Slice Vorpal, Slice Deconstruct. There's just a lot of different variants that you can really dive into and take advantage of in PvE. Now, of course, the only caveat is that it is behind Iron Banner, and I know many of you are not really PvP fans, and so if this is something that you're not necessarily opting in for, it's not mandatory. You don't have to have Tusk of the Boar. As I said earlier in the video, comparatively, there are other great options that are available without having to risk or stress yourself with going into Iron Banner. But again, this is a brand new wave frame grenade launcher. It's the first of its kind being Strand, so I would say take advantage of it while you still have the opportunity. Iron Banner is only around for so long, and this is a great chance to grab one of the more newer wave frame grenade launchers, which I feel down the road, given that it's Strand, there will likely be updates to the GL itself. Maybe more perks will be added, who knows. But be that as it may, I really do feel like Tusk of the Boar really shines, and so out of 5, I give Tusk of the Boar a solid 4.5 out of 5. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure as always to like, comment, and subscribe. Look forward to more weapon reviews in the future. And as I say, new warriors, stay strong, keep fighting, and may the Force be with you all, always. Keep it locked here on New Frontier for more Destiny 2, sci-fi, and much more. Take care, and see you again soon. Peace.